Tonight, we begin with a crisis in the South China Sea, a region long simmering with tension, but now teetering on the edge of open conflict. For years, these waters have been a flashpoint claimed by multiple nations, but none more assertively than China and the Philippines. The world has watched as rival ships shadow each other, but what happened this June was unlike anything before. On June 17, 2024, a routine Philippine resupply mission near the contested Second Thomas Shoal suddenly turned violent, shattering the uneasy status quo that had held for months. Chinese forces intercepted and rammed the Philippine naval vessels, escalating the encounter far beyond the usual cat-and-mouse games and routine warnings that have become almost commonplace in these waters. Videos captured the chaos as it unfolded, metal grinding against metal, the shouts of sailors echoing over the roar of the sea, and a clash that felt, for a moment, like the very brink of war. The tension was palpable, the fear unmistakable. The Filipino sailors were on a mission to deliver food, water, and essential supplies to their comrades stationed aboard the BRP Sierra Madre, a rusting World War II-era ship deliberately grounded on the shoal, serving as a lonely but defiant outpost and a symbol of Philippine sovereignty in these disputed waters. As the resupply boats drew near, Chinese Coast Guard ships closed in, surrounding the smaller Philippine vessels in a show of overwhelming force. The tension escalated rapidly, with the Filipino crew realizing they were outnumbered and outgunned. Suddenly, Chinese personnel, some wielding knives and axes, boarded the Philippine boats. The confrontation was no longer just about territory, it was now a matter of survival. The Filipino crew, vastly outnumbered, did what they could to defend themselves and their mission. They braced for conflict, holding their ground as best they could in the face of overwhelming odds. The aftermath was grim. Chinese forces slashed the boats, seized the supplies meant for the outpost, and left several Filipino sailors injured, some with wounds that would scar them for life. One Filipino sailor lost a thumb in the melee, a stark reminder of how quickly these confrontations can turn bloody and personal. The mission failed. The supplies never reached the outpost, leaving the men aboard the Sierra Madre isolated and undersupplied, their morale shaken by the violence and the sense of abandonment. This was not just a failed mission, it was a calculated message from Beijing. The Chinese government, through its actions, made it clear that it is willing to use force to assert its claims, regardless of international condemnation or the risk of escalation. In the days that followed, China ramped up its military exercises in the region, sending a chilling signal to its neighbors and the world. It is prepared to back its words with action, and the rules of engagement have changed. The world watched in alarm as the West Philippine Sea dispute entered a new, more dangerous phase. Newsrooms from Washington to Tokyo scrambled to cover the unfolding crisis, while diplomats worked frantically behind the scenes to prevent further escalation. For those on the front lines, the risk of bloodshed is now real and immediate. Every decision, every maneuver carries the weight of potential disaster. The attack marked a turning point, shattering any illusion of restraint or predictability in the region. The fragile peace that once held these waters together has been broken, replaced by uncertainty and fear. Now, the Philippines faces a stark and painful choice: stand down and risk losing its foothold in the disputed sea, or push back and risk even greater violence. The decisions made in the coming days will shape the future of the region, and perhaps the world. The seas, once blue and calm, now run red, not just with blood, but with warning. The storm clouds gathering overhead are a sign of the danger that now looms over the entire region. The world is left to wonder, what comes next? Will cooler heads prevail, or is this the first step toward a wider conflict that could draw in powers from across the globe? The stakes have never been higher. In these troubled waters, every move is watched, every decision scrutinized, and the fate of nations may hang in the balance. For years, the West Philippine Sea simmered with tension, but outright violence was rare. The region was a chessboard of rival patrols, each side watching the other with suspicion, but rarely crossing the line into open conflict. Ships from both China and the Philippines would shadow each other, exchanging warnings over radio, but the encounters usually ended with both sides backing off, wary of sparking a larger crisis. Chinese ships routinely shadowed and blocked Philippine vessels, using water cannons, aggressive maneuvers, and sheer intimidation to assert their claims. These confrontations were tense and dangerous, but they stopped short of direct physical violence. The message was clear. China was willing to push the boundaries, but not to the point of war, at least not yet. There was an unspoken rule in these waters: avoid direct violence. Both sides seemed to understand that a single miscalculation could ignite a conflict neither wanted. So, for years, the standoffs remained just that: tense, nerve-wracking, but ultimately non-lethal. But everything changed on June 17th. news broke of a major incident at sea, shattering the fragile status quo and sending shockwaves through the region. This time, Chinese personnel didn't just use water cannons, they wielded knives and forcibly boarded a Philippine vessel. The use of bladed weapons and direct boarding actions marked a dangerous and unprecedented escalation, crossing a line that had previously held for years. China is now openly testing the limits of Philippine resolve and the commitment of its allies, including the United States. The presence of Allied ships in the background is a stark reminder that any misstep could draw in more powerful players, raising the stakes for everyone involved. The old rules are gone. Now, physical harm is not just a risk, it's a reality. Filipino sailors have been injured, and the threat of further violence hangs over every mission. China's Coast Guard and maritime militia now operate side by side, blurring the line between law enforcement and military action. Their coordinated presence creates a sense of overwhelming force, making it difficult to distinguish between routine patrols and acts of aggression. These so-called gray zone tactics are designed to bully and intimidate, pushing the Philippines to the brink without triggering a full-scale war. It's a strategy of constant pressure, hoping to wear down resistance over time. The attack on Filipino sailors was a bold and calculated move in this ongoing strategy. It sent a clear message: China is willing to escalate, and the risks for those who stand in its way are growing. Now every new mission for the Philippine Navy and Coast Guard carries the risk of deadly confrontation. The tension is palpable as sailors prepare, knowing that the next encounter could turn violent at any moment. The Philippines faces a stark choice: abandon its outposts and cede ground, or risk the lives of its sailors to maintain a presence in these contested waters. Each decision is fraught with danger and uncertainty. As the situation escalates, the path to peace becomes more difficult. Diplomatic efforts are overshadowed by the threat of further violence, and trust between the parties is eroding fast. The world is watching, anxious and uncertain. Every new incident is broadcast globally, fueling fears of a wider conflict and putting pressure on leaders to find a solution before it's too late. In these tense waters, the next move could change everything. The stakes have never been higher, and the world holds its breath, waiting to see what happens next. Against overwhelming odds, Filipino sailors show remarkable courage. They sail aging boats facing a modern Chinese fleet. On June 17th, they stood their ground, defending their mission and flag. Outmatched and vulnerable, they fought back with resilience. Their greatest weapon is their belief in law and justice. The sailor who lost his thumb was on a humanitarian mission, not a battlefield. These are ordinary people thrust into a global power struggle. Their sacrifice personalizes the conflict's cost. Their bravery inspires national pride and calls for support. They are modern heroes, but their vulnerability is clear. The Philippines must do more than praise them. It must protect them. International support is crucial. These sailors hold the line for their nation and the world. Their courage deserves more than words. China's gray zone tactics are calculated to intimidate without open war. Using Coast Guard and maritime militia, China frames aggression as law enforcement. Swarms of fishing boats and water cannons create barriers, not battlefields. This slow, relentless pressure wears down opposition. The Philippines faces a dilemma: fight back and risk war, or yield and lose sovereignty. China exploits this, pushing boundaries with each incident. The June 17th attack shows China is willing to escalate. The goal: make resistance too costly for Manila. It's a war of attrition, not of armies, but of will. This strategy threatens not just the Philippines, but the global rules-based order. The world must recognize the danger of these tactics. The stakes are bigger than a single shoal. The challenge is to resist without triggering catastrophe. At the heart of the conflict, international law versus China's historical claims. In 2016, the Philippines won a landmark ruling at The Hague, rejecting China's 9-dash line. The court affirmed Philippine rights in its exclusive economic zone. China dismissed the ruling, insisting on ancient rights. Beijing's stance: history trumps modern law. This refusal fuels ongoing tension. The Philippines operates under international law. China acts as if it owns the sea. Every clash is not just about territory, but about the rule of law. China's actions challenge the global order, might over right. The world is watching this test case. If China prevails, international law is weakened everywhere. Smaller nations fear the precedent. The line drawn at The Hague is being erased at sea. The outcome will echo far beyond Asia. Beyond military clashes, Filipino fishermen face daily hardship. The West Philippine Sea is their livelihood, now turned into a zone of fear. Chinese vessels harass, chase, and sometimes ram their boats. Catches dwindle, debts rise, and families suffer. Fishermen travel farther, risking more for less. The economic and social toll is devastating. Communities crumble as fishing grounds are lost. This is a slow-motion humanitarian crisis. Fishermen have no protection, just hope and resilience. Their struggle is the human face of the conflict. They are losing not just income, but heritage and hope. For them, survival is the real battle. The violence in the West Philippine Sea risks a wider conflict. The 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty binds the Philippines and the U.S. The U.S. now says an armed attack on Philippine forces in the South China Sea triggers the treaty. China's recent aggression tests this commitment. If a Filipino sailor is killed, will the U.S. intervene? The risk of miscalculation is high. A single incident could spiral into war. The consequences would be catastrophic for the region and the world. The Philippines is also building alliances with Japan, Australia, and Europe. Joint exercises signal unity, but add complexity. These alliances deter China, but also raise tensions. The path to peace is narrow. Each new clash brings the world closer to the brink. Diplomacy should offer a way out, but talks are failing. Despite meetings and hotlines, communication breaks down at critical moments. China demands the Philippines accept its sovereignty before talks, an impossible ask. The Philippines insists on international law as the basis for negotiation. This deadlock breeds mistrust and stalemate. China's actions at sea contradict its words in meetings. The Philippines sees bad faith. China sees betrayal in Manila's Western alliances. Without trust, minor incidents risk major escalation. Hotlines go unanswered when needed most. Diplomacy's silence leaves sailors to send messages with their actions. The danger grows as words fail. The West Philippine Sea dispute is more than a regional squabble. It's a flashpoint that could shape the future of global relations for decades to come. What's happening here is not just about two countries arguing over territory. It's about the very foundation of how nations interact, resolve conflicts, and respect each other's sovereignty. It's a battle for the future of the international order. The rules and agreements that have kept the world relatively stable since World War II are being tested. If these rules are bent or broken here, it sets a precedent that could unravel the fragile balance elsewhere. If China rewrites the rules here, others may follow elsewhere. Powerful nations might feel emboldened to assert their will over weaker neighbors, leading to a world where might makes right and international law is ignored. The South China Sea is vital. 1/3 of global shipping passes through these waters. Trillions of dollars in goods, from electronics to food and fuel, depend on these routes staying open and secure. Any conflict would disrupt trade, causing global economic chaos. Supply chains would break down, prices would soar, and every day, people around the world would feel the impact, whether they live in Manila, New York, or London. The fight is also about the rights of smaller nations. It's about whether countries like the Philippines can stand up to bigger powers and have their voices heard on the world stage. If the world fails to support the Philippines, the message is clear: might makes right. It tells every small nation that their rights and security depend only on their strength, not on justice or international agreements. The principle of equality under law is at stake. International law is supposed to protect the weak and restrain the powerful. If it fails here, its credibility everywhere is weakened. The world must choose: ignore the crisis, or defend the rules that keep peace. This is a defining moment for global leadership and collective action. A peaceful solution is possible, but it requires unity and resolve from the international community. Only by working together can nations prevent escalation and ensure a stable, prosperous future. The future isn't just about territory, it's about the world we want. A world where disputes are settled by dialogue, not force, and where every nation's rights are respected. Filipino sailors defend more than a shoal. They defend a rules-based future. Their stand is a symbol of hope for all who believe in fairness and justice. The world should stand with them, because in defending the rights of one, we protect the future of all.